my beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and we're going to talk about some new sets and some new palettes that have just landed on the ColourPop site today. Now, all of these things are currently available, and you will be able to use my affiliate code, which is just Amanda, to save 10% on your order. I also want to remind you that this month there's free worldwide shipping, and this month is almost over. So if you are one of my international friends, especially my international friends who have been waiting to get your hands on the new High Tide and Fine Feathered palettes, now is the time to snap up that free shipping. You don't need a code for the free shipping, so you should still be able to use a discount code on top of that. And another reminder, my code is an affiliate code, so I do earn a small commission if you choose to use it. And to everybody who has been using my code and supporting the channel, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And if that is not your jam, that is not your kind of thing, there is absolutely no pressure to do so. Just know I still appreciate your beautiful face being here. So let's go through each one of these little collections. We have 6 mini collections, 4 of which are based on these little 9-pan palettes that have been around for a hot minute. And we also have 2 of these little mini collections based on the 2 new 9-pans, High Tide and Fine Feathered. Let's go through the old palette collections first. Each collection comes with one of the 9-pan palettes, a Super Shock Shadow Duo, and a Cream Gel Liner Duo. I am not going to be swatching these older palettes. I have full swatch and review videos with all 4 of these where you can see comparisons and tutorials and all the info on those. So I'm going to try to focus on the newer things, and it might be a little bit misleading to say newer things because the vast majority, if not all, of the Super Shock shadows and cream gel liners are re-promoted shades. I recognize almost all of them, so there may be a couple of new ones in here. There are some names that aren't immediately familiar to me, but for example, these 2, Polly and Muse, I know that I've had these 2 in my collection for a while. Same with these cream gel liner shades. These are also re-promotes. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing because a lot of these older products were either discontinued or have been out of stock for a really long time. So even though they're sort of re-promoting, bringing back around shades that some of us might already have in our collections, it's also a great chance for people who missed out to snag those shades that were just giving them so much FOMO. Especially with so few and far between restocks on the ColourPop site in the past year or so, I'm not really mad about seeing some re-promoted shades or some old faves come back in stock. Now, let's talk pricing. You will be able to find all of these pieces individually. So the palettes are individually priced at $14 US a piece. These little Super Shock Shadow Duos are priced at $12 each. And then the Cream Gel Liner Duos are also priced at $14 each. However, you can get an entire collection. So the palette, it's coordinating Super Shock Duo and the coordinating Cream Gel Liner Duo for $29, which is an amazing value because if you bought all 3 pieces individually, it would be $40. So by purchasing the entire bundle, you would be saving $11, which is a pretty decent chunk of change, especially in the context of a $40 or $29 purchase. However, I just want to remind you that it's only a good deal if you actually want all 3 pieces. It's only a good value if you actually are interested in all the pieces in the collection. Otherwise, you're still paying more than you would. Does that make sense? If you only want the liners and the Super Shocks, then just get those individually. Even though you would just be spending another couple of dollars for the palette, if you don't want it, it's still not a good value. Does that make sense? I just really want to encourage you to make purchases that are going to be fulfilling and that make you happy and that fill a solid place in your collection. So don't feel compelled to just go and buy every single bundle just because it's a good deal, because at that point, it's not a good deal if you don't love what you're getting. Okay, anyway, rant over. Now, I do want to point out that the Super Shock duos are carrying special packaging on the little Super Shock pots themselves. I really am a sucker for this kind of thing. Personally, I love the Super Shock shadows. I started buying ColourPop products when all they had were Super Shock shadows. So it's really just such an OG special product for me. And I'm happy anytime that they release Super Shock shadows. I think the little color coordinating collections are super cute. As far as the liners go, the only special packaging is on the little outer box. And I just want to take a moment here to mention that this cream gel liner in the shade Honeydew is one of my all-time favorites. If you know me, you know I don't really wear a lot of eyeliner, but I love a sort of fleshy toned liner in the lower waterline to really brighten up the eyes, and this one in Honeydew is perfect shade for me, and the cream gel liner formula is super soft, easy to work with. It's not like dragging on my inner waterline area, so I'm happy to see Honeydew here. Now, when it comes to this last little collection before we get to the new palettes, I do want to point out here that I think that this shade Sail Away might be a new Super Shock shadow. Like I said at the beginning, I think a couple of the Super Shock shadows may be new shades. There's been so many ColourPop collections and I just can't remember them all. Honestly, I think I have a pretty good memory for product names. Definitely not perfect, but I do think that this one, Sail Away, might be a new one. I could be totally off base. Anyway, I want to point out with this cream gel liner duo, it's called Coral Isle. This is probably my least favorite of the gel liner sets because these two shades look so similar once they're applied to the skin. Could this just be a phenomenon that I am experiencing on my personal skin tone? Yes, and they're definitely not exactly the same, but Peach Fuzz and Bay Breeze look so similar. I cannot imagine needing both of these, but maybe this is you just love peach eyeliner, in which case this is going to be perfect for you. Now, let's get to the really fun part. Let's talk about the new stuff. Very excited to see the High Tide palette finally making its way to the ColourPop site. I know a lot of my international friends were just waiting for this to happen since High Tide dropped as an Ulta exclusive a while back. So I'm very excited for you all that you'll finally be able to order this palette. And from the perspective of somebody that doesn't love a lot of blue and greens, I actually really like this little Super Shock duo as well. Both of the shades are really fun, bright, interesting, and they have a good contrast between the two. So I also really think that these Super Shock shadows are cute. Sure Thing might also be a new shade. I know that they had the same shade name for a pressed powder single, but that was like a bright neon, like pinky orange coral type of color. So I think that this green Super Shock shadow is also new. I know a lot of people have really been wanting a teal monochromatic moment from ColourPop, so I'm very happy to see that the people are getting what they want here. I do think this entire mini collection is nicely curated. There's nice contrast between these little additional products, and overall I think that this whole High Tide collection is probably the best of all 6. And that's me talking. Who am I? Do I like blue and green now? I'm having an identity crisis. Let's take a close-up look at the High Tide palette. This packaging is really, really cute. I think it's interesting. It has great texture, great color, and it's not too on the nose. It has more of a referential look to it. So I really, really just think they knocked it out of the park from beginning to end. There are no eye safety warnings. You know that I love to see that. And I'm just overall, shockingly, a huge fan of this palette. It's beginning to end, well curated, well designed, super duper pretty. There's no mirror in here. It's just their regular 9-pan cardboard packaging with a magnetic closure. And when we take a close-up look here, there is one matte with a little bit of a micro glitter in there. We have 3 metallics, and then we have 5 true matte shades. And the shade Muscle Beach, with that cheeky spelling of muscle, it is a little bit of a duochrome shade. They did have a Muscle MUSC LE Beach shade, but that was a different pressed powder single shade. Pretty sure that was like a bright blue. I can't remember all of them. I try my best. And I just wanted to give you a really, really close-up look here at the finger and brush swatches before we hop into some comparisons. I did a little handful of comparisons for each one of the new palettes, and this first comparison is just with some single shadows that I already had in my collection. I will list all of the shade names for these singles in the description box. I promise I will not forget. I promise I'll do that for you. It was actually pretty tough to come up with good comparisons for the High Tide palette because this is just overall a very unique palette in my personal collection and in the ColourPop line in general. Meant to Be has some decently similar shades, but overall Meant to Be is much lighter and leans more towards like a pastel green. It's really not hitting those richer, deeper notes that the High Tide palette has. I'm also going to show you a comparison with Just My Luck. I pulled my Blue Moon palette to do a 4th comparison for this, but they were so dissimilar. It wasn't really worth staining my arm blue because, you know, I have a whole nother set of comparisons I'm going to do with Fine Feathered. So Just My Luck is much more similar than the Blue Moon palette. Now, speaking of Fine Feathered, let's take a look at this little collection. And I also just want to point out that my nails are painted to match this packaging, and I love this entire vibe. I love a matching nail moment, and I always list my nail polish that I'm wearing down in the description box, just a side note, because a lot of people will comment, thank you, saying that you love my nail polish, thank you, so I always list it for you. Let's get back to the ColourPop product, shall we? This is the On the Wing Super Shock Shadow Duo. This is another one of my favorite products from this launch. And I think that the Super Shock Shadow Duo here from the Fine Feathered collection is the best of the 3 products in this little mini pink collection. I really like everything from the packaging, the finishes, the shades, the contrast. These are my favorite Super Shock shadows of the bunch. And if I was going to pick one thing from this Fine Feathered collection, I think the shadows, the Super Shocks, are the best thing. Now, the cream gel liners, they perform well. They're just not my cup of tea color-wise. And I do want to point out that a bunch of these products are marked as not intended for use in the eye area. I have a whole video about patch testing and what that means and why those little warnings are there and why you should actually care about them. I have a video where I talk about that. It's my wine collection video, so I'll link that below. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, go and check that out because we don't want to have any allergic reactions around the eye area. That's just no fun. But you know what is fun? New palettes. So let's look at this Fine Feathered palette. When we take a look at the back here, we will see that a couple of these shades also have that little asterisk that says not intended for use in the eye area. So just patch test these shades. That way you can know where you stand as far as any sort of reaction or staining or anything like that. So I always like to just make you aware of those because I love your face and I love your eyes, and eyes are part of your face. So let's keep those little peepers healthy, okay? When it comes to this fine feathered palette, I again really like the packaging design here. I like the colors, I like the styling, and I actually like the packaging more than I like the shades inside. That's not to say that the shades don't match up with the packaging, but I just don't think there's enough contrast, and I don't think there's enough shimmer. We have one matte with micro glitters, two shimmers, and then the rest are mattes. And the mattes there at the end, Goose Chase, Nest Egg, and Hen Party, are all a little too similar for me. I do find myself wishing that we had another shimmer instead of these three mattes. Now, they're not exactly the same. You can tell one's magenta, one's red, one's pink, but they end up looking pretty similar on the eye. So I do wish that in place of one of those, we had a nice, deep red shimmer or something to just, I like shimmer on the eye. So that's just one gal's opinion. Now we're going to look at some more swatch comparisons here. And I had a lot more potential for comparison with this fine feathered palette. I just think it's not quite as unique as High Tide. And I only did a handful of comparisons. I just picked the ones that I felt were the most similar and the ones that would be most useful to you. And they're not exactly the same. This Menage a Moi is a lot more mauve-y, kind of brownish purple. And next, when we take a look at the Ooh La La palette, which was the first one that came to my mind to compare, you'll see, again, not a lot of one-to-one matches. I think the one we looked at first, the It's All Good palette, was the most similar. Ooh La La, actually, you notice that it doesn't have as much depth when you see it next to Fine Feathered. So I do tend to prefer Fine Feathered over the Ooh La La palette. The last one that I'm sure everybody's going to be asking for is the Bye Bye Birdie palette, and the theming's really similar, as well as the color story being very similar. So, this is a decent comparison too, and not quite as many one-to-one shade matches as the It's All Good palette, but still, it's still a pretty similar color story. It would be crazy for me to deny that. Although Fine Feather doesn't have any pressed glitter, so has that going for it. Now, when it comes to all of the stuff we've talked about today, I do think that these two new palettes are really the most exciting, at least for me. And I would have to say that, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think that the High Tide palette is all around more interesting, more unique, and just all around better than the Fine Feathered palette. And, we all have a lot of pinks and reds and that kind of stuff. So I do think that the High Tide palette is, it's the way to go in my just one girl's opinion. So my top picks from these new little products are the High Tide palette, the Keep Your Cool liner duo, specifically because I like Honey Dude, and then if I was going to do an eyelid liner, I want a nice warm kind of rich brown shade, which is also included here with Stomper. And then the two new Super Shock duos, On the Wing and Wave Breaker. Those are my personal top picks, but I would love to hear what you think about these products. Are you going to be picking anything up? Are you one of my international friends that has been chomping at the bit to get these new High Tide and Fine Feathered palettes? I always love to hear what you think about things too, so make sure you leave all your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Okay, I love your face. Thanks for watching. Okay, bye!